If anyone ever have really bad parents, okay, that's what collectivism and socialism.
That's the part of the equation that these communists don't ever talk about, man.
Yeah.
What the machine actually looks like behind the facade, what the sausage looks like, right?
Yep.
Oh, he doesn't tell you you're going to be hyper surveilled. You're going to be possibly told how many hours a week you got to work. You're going to possibly told what area of New York you're going to live in, what kind of house you're going to have, how many kids you could possibly have. Well, this is the kind of food you're going to eat too. Underneath the word free, that's the other side of the word free under collectivism, communistic models that this guy doesn't talk about. You know, and all those dumbbells holding up signs, we love you. We got a new vision. Collectivism is freedom or whatever. All those dumbbells, they've never asked the question behind what's quote unquote free under the collectivist model.
Yeah.
And if they were told these stories that your ancestors in China lived under Mao Zedong, well, I'm just saying, he's the ultimate personification of collectivism.
Sure. I mean, we see it in Venezuela.
I know, but China has millions more people because you have 1,500,000,000 people. I'm using Mao Zedong because he has expressed collectivism. He's dead, of course, but his model under collectivism has expressed itself in the biggest swath of population on planet Earth than anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's happened in Cuba. It's happened in Venezuela. It's happened in Vietnam. It's happened in Russia. Russia collapsed in 1991 or 1990. But those examples of collectivism, which is communism, your unfortunate guy, he's an ancestor, he's Mao Zedong, expressed itself, and it's still unfurling as dystopia in China, in Shanghai, in Peking, and various other big cities there.
This podcast, for instance, would not be allowed.
Of course not. And we'd be taken off in handcuffs if we tried to make the podcast happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the other side of freedom that all the people that are espousing and being charmed by the communist mayor, all those people being charmed by what he talks about. I just wish those people that have endorsed him and have supported him have asked, where does the free get paid for, sir? Where does it actually get paid for? No one asks that question.
Because that's an inconvenient question.
All right, folks, welcome to another iteration of Inside Reality. I'm Jeffrey Candelaria with Jimmy Tran. We're with you every week, and we try to take on salient, relevant topics and discuss these topics minus I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican perspective, and just try to take them on based on just visceral feeling and critical thinking. Today, we're going to talk about collectivism, warm collectivism, a term used by the communist mayor of our nation's largest city. I don't even want to even pronounce the guy's name. I just think he's hoodwinked that 8 million population, what used to be financial center called New York City. And now we're going to live with the consequences of his policies. Actually, what I think is going to happen, Jimmy, and we're kind of getting right into it, I think he's going to surrender to more practical thinking, and some of the forces that surround him are going to compel him to be a little bit more of a pragmatist. I don't think he's going to implement his socialist communist policies, because if he does, it's going to be an utter catastrophe. He'll have some short-term popularity. If he does that, there'll be some short-term benefit, but there's no such thing as free housing, free food, free universal health care, free transportation, free entertainment, any of that. At some point, someone has to pay. And those that do pay, as I've argued on previous shows, they stop being incentivized to generate wealth, and then the buck stops and there's no more wealth, and it collapses from inside out, because you de-incentivize people that do produce wealth to produce wealth. That's why I retired early, because I got tired of being in New Mexico and paying huge taxes here and financing socialist policies, and also paying what's called gross receipts tax, which is a penalty for actually generating a profit. So I stopped doing that. And you watch, if that communist mayor of New York City implements socialist communist policies, people that do produce wealth will stop doing so over time because their money is basically being utilized to support free housing and to support populations that do not produce wealth. They just take, take, take. That's warm collectivism as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, it's important to understand that collectivism is there's some challenges with it, right? I mean, there's a lot of problems with collectivism.
Define it from your point of
So,
view. His
well,
words, the communist mayor of New York City, newly installed as of January 1st, 2026, in his inauguration speech, he used the theme of warm collectivism
yeah,
versus rugged individualism.
individual.
Find those terms.
Well, I mean, collectivism really is a model where the individual is not the priority, if you will, right? I mean, so everything has to reach a common good, if you will, and so that to me spells trouble, especially. I mean, if you look at how, like, I like to use the family model as a structure, right? I mean, in a model with typical nuclear family, you have parent and then you have children, right? And but who's producing? I mean, the only people that are producing are the parents, right? In that situation. And so collectivism is a model where you have very limited production from the whole. I mean, you in order to get all total production from the whole collective, from the whole society, you have to you either incentivize them or you force them. Those are the two options, right? Because you can because the individual perspective, individual position is minimized. So I can't just say, okay, I choose not to work. Well, in a collectivist type of society model, no one gets to say, I'm not going to work, right? So everybody has to work. So that's a good thing on one level. But the challenge is that you either are working by force or that's it. So unless there's
not only that, but
incentive,
under his warm collectivism model, if it's actually expressed to its ultimate conclusion, not only do you have to work, the government's going to tell you what the hell job you're going to have.
Correct. Yep. That's
so this idea of the American dream, which I think is died a long time ago, that's dead under collectivism. You can't choose to be a plumber, or I want to be an attorney.
No.
I want to be an astronaut. I want to be an astrophysicist. That's gone under his warm collectivism model.
Because because you got
because government tells you what you're gonna do based on whatever resource they have to provide.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
So here's the other problem that you have as well. Okay, he's the mayor of New York. Okay, so how many farms are in the city of New York? Probably
none.
0. Okay, so that means that the whole of their food production, just on that level, has to be brought in from the outside. Okay, so that means that yes, there's no farms. I mean, yeah, there's some gardening in here and there, but there's no farm, right? So to feed the 15 million or the 12 million, whatever the size of New York population is, right? That means that all the food has to come from outside, okay? So that means that you're going to have to pay for it to get that food to be delivered because you're not going to produce it internally, because even just the raw material is not going to be available. So that's going to be...
Well, it's already coming from the outside.
Correct.
Free enterprise model.
With a free enterprise model, there's an incentive for people to offer. Now, obviously, they can, if they're able to produce more, I suppose, of other things, then they can use the money that they produce from other things.
You didn't connect all the dots there. Okay.
Okay.
Under a free enterprise model in New York, let's use Manhattan as part of the equation, because there's boroughs there. There's Manhattan, there's Long Island, there's the Bronx, there's Brooklyn, there's Queens, I think. So each of those is its own little population ecosystem center, right?
Yeah.
But let's use Manhattan as an example. That's where the financial centers are. And if you want to go to a 5-star restaurant and have steak Diane, Oscar style, and a $500, glass of wine, you can do that. But that restaurant that I'm talking about charges exorbitant prices for that meal and the experience.
Sure.
But under his little warm collectivism model, the government's going to ultimately, at some point, if he does what he says he's going to do, but he doesn't have the balls to do this, okay? You watch. He will not be the warm collectivist that he says he is, because that restaurant's going to close. Why is it going to close? Because the government, under his warm collectivism model, is going to charge exorbitant taxes for being an entrepreneurial free enterprise restaurant,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
They're probably paying 40% taxes now under the current system. Under his warm collectivism model, because he's got to generate tax, exorbitant tax to pay for all his free programs, right?
Yeah.
That same restaurant's going to be charged, instead of 40% overall from gross receipts, it's got to pay 50, 60, 70%.
Yeah.
So do you think that restaurant ownership, their board of directors, is going to continue to pay 70% taxes and only make, smaller percentages of profits? Hell no. Hell no. They're going to move that restaurant to New Jersey, or to, what is it? Philadelphia is relatively close, I guess,
Yeah.
or some other population center that doesn't charge those same taxes,
Yeah.
to attract the same high wealth population that's going to pay $500 for a meal. Again, there's problems with wealth, inconsistency as well. I understand that. That's a separate conversation. All I'm saying is economics is about incentivization. And
Exactly.
those kinds of restaurants that generate that kind of wealth are going to get the hell out of there. If this guy, whatever the guy, I don't want to even pronounce the guy's name. I can't stand him already. But if his warm collectivism model that he espouses, if he actually expresses it out, which he will not, because he doesn't have the balls to do it, but if he does, those kinds of free enterprise centers are gonna leave, because
Yeah.
they're gonna be exorbitantly taxed even more than they are now.
Yeah.
Do you understand that? Yeah.
No, I mean, that's also another thing that collectivism, that I don't think people understand, is that collectivism as a model, especially for governance, for instance, means that since the priority is with the group and not with the individual, so therefore, the mob always gets its way, if you will. And that's the direction that it always goes towards. Okay. So that's an unfortunate, but that is how that happens. And so unless people are clearly, meaning that the responsibility doesn't come to the individual. So when we don't have that, then people are not going to ever care about.
Well, I think you're getting close, but you're still not articulating it the way I think you could, or I
Okay.
could. So you're from China, or part of you is.
My ancestors are.
Remind people what Mao Zedong did.
Yeah.
Besides wipe out, what is it, 30 million people he didn't
80.
like?
80.
Yeah. So remind people about Mr. Mao
Yeah.
Zedong, who was a collectivist.
Yeah.
Remind people what happened to your ancestors. 80
Yeah.
million people wiped off the fucking planet.
Yeah.
Right?
And it was great at the beginning. And that's the thing that people don't understand, is that in China, when, the whole promise of everybody's going to get fed, everything was great until they
1949, right? 1949?
And then when they weren't able to grow food, because they basically disincentivized people, and also, of course, the people that were knowledgeable and had expertise in that were completely eliminated because they were not going along with it.
You're saying eliminated. Use another word for what he did.
Some of them were killed, some of them were forced into labor camps and so forth. And so as a result, the society basically collapsed, and so caused I think it was called the Great Leap Forward, I think was the term that was used to describe what happened there.
Warm collectivism.
Yeah.
His term was the Great Leap Forward.
So,
and how many of your ancestors Chinese died?
80
million.
80 million. So, of course, this is something that is overlooked by all these people that keep saying, oh, this is the best model, this is the way you should go. Because people don't understand it. It's like, because a lot of times people only see the results. They don't see what got, I mean, as much as we may not like the Bezos and the what do you call it, the Zuckerbergs or whatever, right? I mean, we didn't get to see them sleeping on the couches, working 18 hours a day, or working 4 days straight to make sure that whatever they were building, because they had a dream.
Yeah, the liberal progressives hate billionaires But at the same time, they forget the billionaires. Maybe they earned the right to be a billionaire.
Yeah.
And what did they do as billionaires on the way to their success, up the success ladder? They created a hell of a lot of wealth.
Yeah.
And generated a hell of a lot of tax.
Yeah. And put a lot of jobs on the table.
Which the progressive liberals in those states they were at, they usurped a lot of that tax to create their little social programs. Again, I understand as a reluctant Republican, their houses are expensive now. Food is expensive. Good transportation, expensive. To pay for that good transportation, expensive. But guess what? Maybe don't have 5 kids if you can't afford the first kid. Okay. That's what nobody talks about, man.
Yeah.
Living within your means. People don't talk about that because it's too hard a topic to talk about. Yeah. A fat donut eating politician will not say out loud, particularly the Democrat politician will not say out loud, well, maybe you should have had 1 kid before that you couldn't afford because you couldn't even afford the second kid. When's the last time you heard anybody say?
Yeah.
What? Yeah, what?
Well,
yeah, what? Do you agree with that or not?
No, I agree on to some extent. I think that it's important to have children as a society. If not, we're not going to survive.
No, it's not. If you can't afford to have children, don't have kids.
I understand the affordability issue with having children.
I didn't have kids because I didn't want kids, but don't have children if you can't afford them. Why is that such a horrific thing to say out loud?
No, I'm not saying that it's horrific, but I don't think that that's the best reason to have kids or not have children is the affordability. Now, granted, the other, I think that, no, because seriously,
go ahead and have kids if you can't afford the first kid?
No.
Have another one?
No.
Have a third? Have a fourth?
Well, again, remember, there's 2 factors here. We need to have more than 2, I think it's like 2.3 children just to it's called the replacement population number, okay? Meaning that for a society to be able to replace itself, it needs, that society needs to be generating more than 2 children, like I think 2.3 or something, 2.4 children per, as a whole, as a society. Because remember, you have old people, they can't have children. You have
what's wrong with the population shrinking? What's wrong with that? I don't know. What is so wrong with that? If people can't afford to have their first or second child,
that's not even growing.
Then don't have a second child.
No, hold on.
Don't even have the first one if you can't afford to have that first child.
But here's the
thing. It's
like
so irresponsible what you're talking about. Buy a $500,000 house if you can't afford a $500,000 house. Don't worry about it. Just live there. Dig on the mortgage and it'll get taken over.
Hold on. That's not the same thing. Okay, I'm sorry, but that's not the same thing. Having extra and having more is not the same thing as having more children. So having the first child, and the difference in having 1 child versus having 2 children are totally different. And having 3, it doesn't increase by that number, meaning that you have 1 child and you have 2 now, doesn't mean that the cost goes up twice as much. It doesn't work that way, right? So there's a certain number of children that there's an advantage. Of course, I think there's a movie I think called Cheaper by the Dozen. I know this is playing on the word, but having more children is because children are assets. It's a net positive, but it does take time for you because you got to invest in it.
What kind of an asset? When we were an agrarian-based society and lived on a farm, children were assets because it was labor.
Correct.
Because it was labor.
Correct.
But we don't live on farms anymore. But more than half the population lives in verticality.
Yes, but there's
populations that are not producing milk or beef. Yeah,
but that's only one part. But okay, what about when you get older and you're now aged? If you don't have children, who's going to take care of you, right?
If you're an entrepreneur like I was all my life, I have resources that allow for services to take care of me.
Okay.
Because maybe I thought a little bit ahead.
Correct.
Of, just living in the present and being hedonistic all the time.
So that's fine. And that's fine too. But remember, when I say the 2 per family, it's an average, right? So that means that's just enough to replace the population, not grow the population, but to replace the population. So the number, there's a certain number of people that has to be old enough to be able to work and be in the labor force. And then after a certain age, they're not going to be able to work anymore. So
All right,
now
let's
you,
get back to under collectivism as a model, which is a ultra communistic model,
sure,
which you're Chinese, you should be able to articulate because you lived under Mao Zedong. You're laughing, but it's not
racist
funny.
comment.
And not only that, but under this warm collectivism model that communist mayor of New York talks about, ultimately, when it's expressed to its ultimate degree, guess what else government tells you? How many kids you can
Kids
have.
you're gonna have. That is another problem. Yeah,
So talk about that.
yeah, or where you're gonna
About
live.
that.
You know,
Where you're going to live, what you're going to
You're gonna-
eat, where
yeah,
you're going to work, how many kids you're going to have.
because there's no individual choices. I mean, because everybody's going to get the same. That's the idea, is that everybody get the same. And this is the part that the people that want this never think beyond the first order of understanding. Okay.
Right.
So, and then and then also here's another thing that's really interesting too, is that anytime anyone wants to go past that, meaning that they want more, okay, the whole collective will say, no, you cannot have it. And then that's when you end up with
And not only
repression.
more, but they want something different.
Yeah, same
Can't do
thing.
that either.
Yeah. And
But yet, all these dumbbells that elected the communists into power, guess what they did under your first model order? Because it's beginning to express itself
Yeah.
by getting elected, right?
Yeah.
Guess what they just did? The population that voted it for him. It's
Well,
obvious this is inside reality.
Well, they're celebrating it.
They gave him power.
Oh, yeah, sure.
They installed him into power, and you can't take that back because now he's mayor.
And so for the next, I guess it's 4 years, is it? I think, right? 4-year term. So New York's going to have to figure out what they're going to do. And yes.
But do you think he's going to actually have the balls to actually do what he said he was going to do as a communist?
Here's the thing. I don't think that, I mean, that is an important part of it, having the balls to do it. But I think that he might not even be able to, because there's going to be enough pushback from, so we'll see. And that's part of it, right? Because remember.
So what do all the people that say they wanted their free houses and their free food and
Well, they're going to have to
their
take
free
it.
entertainment and their free transportation?
That's the thing, is that they're going to have to take it. And that's part of that's going to be the struggle, right? Those
They're going to have to take.
they're going to have to take it from the people that don't want it. Okay. That's what it's going to come down to. And that's what's going to end up happening, is that the people that have and the people that don't have, okay, the people that don't have are going to go and they're going to take it. That's the eventual end, unless there's a really clear.
You're saying the people that have, well, maybe some of those people earned what they have.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And do you think those people that earned what they have are going to continue to earn if they're going to be having to give up what they've earned to the people that aren't working?
Well, they're going to continue for a little while. They're going to be continue for a little while. I don't know if 4 years is going to be enough to show how bad this can be.
The point you're making it a bit more clumsily is under that calculation, the collectivism calculation, the communist calculation, you take away from the people who have already earned what they have and give it to the people that didn't earn what they don't have. So the people that have earned it, good, bad, or ugly, some of them are profiteers and wealth barons and, avaricious people. I get that. But what happens under that calculation over time? The people that did earn it as individual entrepreneurs are resentful. And then they're also going to do something else.
They're going to leave.
Either that or they're going to stop
producing.
Producing.
Yeah, but most of them are going to leave.
Fine. But in either case, even if they leave, they get resentful and they stop producing. Either way, they leave or stop producing. What happens to the people that didn't have? They're going to not have even more.
Yeah. Now there is a silver line. Silver line is the right term, but there's one positive part of it that I think, some of the people are living in really bad housing situation, for instance, right?
Right.
So there is, because one of the things he also said is that if you're not going to fix that broken toilet, or if you're not going to fix that heater, we're going to take over that property, and and that's it. So they're going to start confiscating property. Now I don't know to what extent he's going to be able to, and to what extent that he's going to be going to do it. But some of those landlords are being put on notice, if you will. Now here's the crux of it too, is that the costs, going back to the cost, right? I mean, so you have taxes and you have all this stuff. So the profitability of owning those apartment complexes or those condominiums or even those single family homes I don't think there's that many of them in New York, but but most of them are just, some kind of condominium or whatever. It's going to be interesting to see how that gets sorted out, because like I said, the city is going to start taking over these properties, and then they're going to have to find money to renovate them. So guess what? People are going to have to, they're going to have to raise taxes in order to do that, unless people are willing to work for free to fix them up. Right? I mean, if the city says that they're going to take over and fix up the property, I mean, remember, some of these properties are hundreds of years old. Okay.
Well, they're not hundreds. They're probably 100 years old. Some of the worst ones. I wouldn't say hundreds.
Okay.
So,
over 100 years old. Possibly,
yeah, I would say
right?
maybe some of them are, I'd say 80 to 100, 120 years.
So that means that the needs for them are much higher maintenance wise, and so the cost, that's partly why they probably not going to be able to fix it, especially if you don't get enough rent.
Yeah, today we're talking on Inside Reality. I'm Jeffrey Candelaria. This is Jimmy Tran. We talk about these issues very, very organically. And what's really astonishing is I don't hear people having these kinds of analytical conversations about what's going on under the collective wealth or warmth collectivism that the communist mayor of New York City has espoused and says he will express. I don't hear people talking about it like this. Do you?
No, not usually.
Why?
Because, well, for one, I think a lot of people are okay with not having to think too deeply about something,
Yeah.
That's right. One, they just kind of pick up on the surface. Remember, we talked about it in a previous episode, like headline people. That's all they look at is just whatever's in the headline, because they're busy with other parts of their life. And we get it, we're all busy. And so it's hard to take time to reflect.
And the fat donut eating politicians don't want to talk about it because it actually makes their constituents actually do some real thinking. And it actually, by definition, based on particularly what I'm saying, it makes those populations, those constituents, take more responsibility for their behavior and their lives.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. I mean, again, at the end of the day, it comes back to our choices. Who do we choose and what do we choose? And then when we choose those choices, then we have to live with those choices. Unfortunately, when it comes to our governance system at the moment, that's not always the case. People make those decisions and then they don't actually have to live.
So that's why we do this show called Inside Reality, because we really take on these topics and we take on very directly. And it's very uncomfortable sometimes to talk about these things. It is. Because I have empathy for some of these people that, they're living, some of them are homeless, some of them are in shanties, some of them are living in tenement houses. It's pretty sad. Some of them have been exploited by landlords who are woefully avaricious and greedy. I get all that. But at the same time, those same people have to take some personal individual responsibility for their lives. Maybe don't have another child if you can't already afford the children you have.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got to think about putting some of your kids maybe up for adoption. I don't know. It's very easy for me to say it over here. I don't know. But maybe you got to take on that other job. I mean, I respect you. You're working, whatever time it is now. I'm retired. I'm fine. But I thought about my retirement plans 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And I planned out my life so I could be a little bit more comfortable. Sure. I don't have kids because I didn't want the expense of children. I'm being completely honest. Yeah. I married a woman who had a high education, who produces an income. Right now she's at work, who's younger than me. But I worked, for 40 years to generate wealth so that I could have some of the comforts I have now. Yeah. I thought about it. I thought about that. And I resisted all my life a collectivist model, a communistic model. I didn't want to have any part of it. Here's another thing. You're Chinese. Tell your little friends watching today how China looked, in 1959, in 1969, after Mao was in power for 25, 30 years. Yeah. How dystopian did some of China look after his great leap forward? Do your ancestors ever talk about that? Do they ever share stories?
Well, my parents, my grandparents left before all that, really happened, because they saw what was coming. They didn't want, to be a part of that.
But it turned to be pretty dystopian, didn't it?
Oh yeah. It's still now. It's even more so. And now the dystopian is on huge scale. For instance, we have literally live organ harvesting for people that are politically dissenters, meaning that people that
talk about this.
So
Share with our listeners what China looks like now after Mr. Mao took over in 1949 with his collectivism model.
Well,
Share some of these stories. I'm interested.
Yeah.
I'm all ears.
So aside from the 80 million that have died, through various forms of, there was this great famine that took place. This was an area that's never had a famine before, for instance. Okay. Suffered the first famine under this model. So that's how, literally, China has been in existence for, 5,000 years and has never experienced a famine in this one region because it was so
fertile.
It was fertile and resource filled and everything. And it was considered to be, and only in this one short period, boom, they experienced this famine. So that's just an example of how quickly it can end up that way, and the other thing that is, very dystopic in terms of what's happening in China, of course, is if you dissent with government, what they do, complain and whatnot, they put you in a, re-education camp. You can literally be arrested for thinking the wrong thing or thinking the wrong way.
Or saying the wrong thing.
Saying the wrong thing to the
and you
wrong
can't
people.
Go out there and protest, and you can remind our listeners, people can't just go protest with their little signs.
No peaceful
and wave an
protesting
American
there.
flag in China, right?
Yeah,
right?
No peaceful. Well, even the Chinese flag there, even appropriate. Yeah, there's definitely no peaceful protesting there, whatever form. We saw that with Tiananmen Square, 1980, I think it was, or 89, I forget. But anyway,
1989, where the guy stood in front of a tank.
With a tank, yeah. So
the tank was going to run him over.
Yep. And then right now, there's so much. There's no privacy either, because in order for you to monitor and because remember, when we're talking about collectivism, that means that everybody at every moment needs to do everything they can for the collective. So that means that you cannot have any kind of personal, private type of ownership, or and if you do, it's very little, right? If anyone ever have really bad parents, okay, that's what collectivism and socialism.
That's the part of the equation that these communists don't ever talk about, man.
Yeah.
What the machine actually looks like behind the facade. What the sausage looks like, right?
Yep.
Oh, he doesn't tell you you're going to be hyper surveilled. You're going to be possibly told how many hours a week you got to work. You're going to possibly told what area of New York you're going to live in, what kind of house you're going to have, how many kids you could possibly have. Well, this is the kind of food you're going to eat too. Underneath the word free, that's the other side of the word free under collectivism, communistic models that this guy doesn't talk about. You know, and all those dumbbells holding up signs, we love you, we got a new vision, collectivism is freedom or whatever. All those dumbbells, they've never asked the question behind what's quote unquote free under the collectivist model.
Yeah.
And if they were told these stories that your ancestors in China lived under Mao Zedong.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, he's the ultimate personification of collectivism.
Sure. We see it in Venezuela.
I know, but China has millions more people because you have 1,500,000,000 people. I'm using Mao Zedong because he has expressed collectivism. He's dead, of course, but his model under collectivism has expressed itself in the biggest swath of population on planet Earth than anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's happened in Cuba. It's happened in Venezuela. It's happened in Vietnam.
Russia.
It's happened in Russia. Russia collapsed in 1991 or 1990. Yeah. But those examples of collectivism, which is communism, your unfortunate guy, he's an ancestor, just Mao Zedong, expressed itself, and it's still unfurling as dystopia in China, in Shanghai, in Peking, and various other big cities there.
This podcast, for instance, would not be allowed.
Of course not. And we'd be taken off in handcuffs if we tried to make the podcast happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the other side of freedom that all the people that are espousing and being charmed by the communist mayor, all those people being charmed by what he talks about. I just wish those people that have endorsed him and have supported him have asked, where does the free get paid for, sir? Where does it actually get paid for? No one asks that question.
Because that's an inconvenient question. Think about that, right? if you're going to sell something, would you tell them the bad stuff that,
Yeah,
right?
I would, because
You
that's the
would?
way I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But generally
When I was in
speaking,
sales, I told people when I was in banking, and I did very well in banking, I would tell people we're an evil bank like the other banks. The difference is you get me, and I'm telling you the truth.
yeah,
I never brought out a brochure. I told people, we're banking is a very evil industry because it's about money and avarice.
yeah,
But I'm just trying to be honest with you about it and
sure.
tell you I'm going to mitigate as much of that out of your life as possible. And I would try to be honest with people. I got in trouble for being that direct with people.
Yeah.
I told them we're an evil bank like everybody else. The difference is you get me. You're laughing.
No. I mean, I'm not laughing. I'm more amused by the experience, but unfortunately that we do have to do that, right? We have to deal with that kind of situation, you know.
But that's the other side of collectivism. Nobody talks about free housing, free food, minimal policemen, harassing you. What is it? What else is free? Free transportation, all that. But nobody ever says, what does free actually mean? Where does this get paid for? Where do those resources get realized? I've never heard one person ask a collectivist, a communist, that question.
Here's another.
What are you stunned? You're not saying anything. And it's the most obvious question. It's the most obvious question to ask.
Repeat your question. I was looking up something.
Free housing, free transportation, free food, fewer policemen on the streets, infrastructure will all get paid for. We're going to clean everything up under the warmth of collectivism. I'd like you to raise your hand and say, sir, who's going to pay for all this free? And who's going to pay for free housing? Meaning, who's going to pay for
he did tell us who.
The stucco, the framing, the carpentry, the toilets, the furniture, the doors, the alarm systems, the windows, the air conditioning. Oh yeah, I forgot. There's got to be air conditioning, right? There's got to be warmth. There's got to be heating, right? There's got to be all that stuff.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay what happens when something leaks or the toilet breaks down? I never heard anybody ask that question.
Well, actually, he did. So here's the number. They're going to raise 2% on all the people that are over whatever amount of money that they make. So the wealthy is going to pay an extra 2% on their taxes. White neighborhoods are going to pay more in property taxes. So those are the two places he's going to be confiscating money.
But did anybody extrapolate the math? A 2% tax hike on the rich is not going to be enough to sustain all this freedom.
Well, it is.
Maybe
It is for a certain period. Yeah,
exactly.
But that's all
for about a year.
He just needs to sell it to the next step. But remember,
we've got about 5 minutes. But Jimmy, how did no one ask that question? The 2% on the rich, okay, fine, and white people paying more, whatever. How come no one actually said, let's do the actual extrapolation based on a calculation on a whiteboard, and let's do the math? How come nobody ever asked that question?
But you're asking it. I mean, there have been.
I know, but I live in New York.
Yeah.
And I don't have to live with that guy.
Well, the people that voted for him definitely didn't ask.
You know why they didn't ask? One, they were not smart enough. I'm sorry. And two, they didn't want to know the real answer.
Yeah, that's probably more true than
I think
anything.
they didn't really want to know the answer.
Yeah. And in a way, I think that this was more of a referendum type of vote than a real, I think that
I hate anything that's like Trump. I hate anything that's like a Republican. Whatever that is, I'm going to vote against. You know what they just did, though? They just voted themselves into dystopia.
Now they have to live with it.
Just like people, just like the Great Leap in 1949 under Mao Zedong.
Yeah. So, the difference, though, in a way, is that there are people that can, people here in the United States at least able to leave. So we have a bit more. So there's a couple of things that kind of working that may not end up in the scenario that happened in China. One is that there's more mobility here, so people can leave even if it's leaving with just the shirt on their back, right? So because everything else can be either
but the options to leave aren't as great as they used to be 30 years ago.
No, but at least
because if you leave from New York to Minnesota,
we're
now the most state in the union, or if you leave to California or Washington State or Oregon or even parts of Nevada or, pick another liberal state, you're going to deal with the same, I guess you'd say, the same pre-war collectivism that you just left from.
Well,
because it's
California,
just percolating. It's just percolating. All this warm collectivism is percolating in Washington State, in California, parts of Nevada, Minnesota, New Jersey. It's percolating, man.
Yeah.
Because that message is very seductive. Fat donut eating collectivists, mostly liberal Democrats, say, you're being oppressed. You're living under crappy housing. The distribution of wealth is horrible. All that. And some of that is absolutely true. But when they seduce you with vote for me, but they give you all this free stuff.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
Whenever there's something free, you got to ask the question, who's paying for it? I mean, and if you don't.
The other question that you don't ask, Jimmy, you got a B now, you were up to an A. How long can it last?
Yeah.
That to me is even more cogent a question than who's paying for it. Because who's paying for it, you can identify pretty quickly. But how long will it last? And how long will those people that are paying for it, how long are they going to tolerate?
But see, here's the thing.
Because they become exploited now.
So
the wealthy become exploited now.
So
the entrepreneurs that generate wealth become exploited now.
Yep.
And they become incentivized. First, they're resentful. Yeah. And then they become de-incentivized. And then they just stop like I did. Yeah. I stopped my businesses and I just basically retired early because I got tired of being overtaxed in this state called New Mexico.
But you had that option. I mean, partly because you created the pathway to get there, but you still had that option versus, not everybody have that option to do that. And that's just unfortunate.
Life's not fair, man.
Yeah.
Life's not fair.
Yeah.
It just isn't. That's the other thing the fat donut eaters don't say. Life isn't fair. It just isn't.
Yeah.
And again, it's hard to say out loud, but some of you out there, you're going to have tough lives, man, because you didn't plan out your lives.
Well, here's another thing that's really, here's another thing that's
got about 3 minutes here.
So here's another thing that's really important too, to kind of point out distinctively on what's going on, right? So because there's enough wealth and enough resources that are still kind of in play, if you will. Right? So people are not just going to disappear and money is just not going to dry up like immediately, right? So
you're right.
So the term is he's got 4-year term. Okay. I mean, we're seeing that happening like here in New Mexico, for instance, in Albuquerque, right? We have, we have a mayor that's now been reelected to his 3rd term.
Unbelievable.
And so
career politician, career power.
So, but I don't think that that's where he's going to stop. I mean, I think he has higher sights. I mean,
he wants to be governor.
So when he's governor in New York, the mandates and the actions are going to be.
Talking about the communist. The communist mayor wants to be the governor of New York, or maybe the president of the country.
Well, he can't because he's not a naturally born U.S. citizen.
I'm sure he can get away around that somehow. But anyway, keep going.
But the point is that right now, of course, his influence is with New York, right? But in the first year or 2 years, you'll probably see some advantages in growth because, again, if you have a pile of money, that pile of money is going to be, you're going to live off of that money. Kind of like if you ever did a loan. So when you get that deposit from the loan, it feels like you got a lot of money. But then once the loan is due and you start paying out, that money is going to start shrinking. And if that money shrinks faster than you can put it back in, you're going to be a problem because you're going to run out of money very quickly if you start spending all that money before you put more back in. So that's a really important element to have to factor in. But here's the thing is that he doesn't need to get to the point where he runs out of money. He just needs to get to a point where people feel like, this is good and there's positive, right? And so
I call it as we conclude, it's the period of seductive functionality. It's a period of seductive functionality. They seduced you, they hoodwinked you, and they can be functional for a period of time.
The honeymoon
But that period of time provides that horrible person with an opportunity to find another seductive functional position somewhere else. And that's what they do. That's what they do.
Yeah, if he steps up before he runs out, then he can keep doing that over and over and over again. And that's what happens with, but here's
meanwhile, we the people, We just got bamboozled, hoodwinked, and exploited. We didn't even know it. All
And
right, man. Inside reality.
like us, subscribe, follow us, and at least share your thoughts on this. Maybe you don't agree. Maybe you think that collectivism will work, for the first time ever in human history. I'd love to hear what that means and what that looked like. I mean, yeah, we want to give him and we want to wish them the best, and we want great outcomes for New York, right? I mean, we want him to see people prosper and
Well, by definition, if he does what he says he's going to do, it's not going to be a great outcome. But all
but
right, man.
all right.
There are no buts
See
about
you
it.
later.